little bit of a late start this evening, but sometimes we're just at the mercy of the computer rendering. But a lot of clouds to look at, lots of stratocumulus and cumulus, and you can see once again the presence of an inversion, probably up about 7,000 to 9,000 feet, due to all the extensive altocumulus layers you see there. And it also appears we have the infusion of a little bit of dry air, kind of by the looks of those clouds. Sky looks pretty blue up above those mid-cloud layers. But anyway, some spectacular time lapse from just about an hour or two ago. And that leads us into the current weather. You can see we've still got an easterly flow here in our part of the southern U.S., which is much different from the typical southerly flow that we have this time of year. Normally, we've got straight flow out of the south, 5 to 10 knots straight out of the Gulf, and not this time around. Southeast U.S. has a lot of shower activity. Looks like Florida has kind of quieted down there. And we can take a look at the Northeast, and they've been under the influence of northwesterly flow for many weeks now. And we can see high pressure, and that's that old Canadian polar high shifting across the Great Lakes and now down into the New York and Pennsylvania area. And here's what it looks like on the surface chart. Looks like another round of cold air on its way south. We can see that up in the Dakotas. And so the leading edge of that front is going to be running something like that. Looks like a very shallow air mass there. And where would we put the warm front? Well, we definitely have a warm air mass over Kansas and Oklahoma. Almost 90 degrees there, Dodge City. And that contrasts very sharply with the 60s and 70s over Wisconsin. So let's see, where do we find the first sign of cool air? Maybe around Kansas City, maybe Topeka. So we might have to put that front somewhere in here like that. Okay, so now we have a pretty good idea what's happening in the surface chart there. High pressure across the northeast, and there's the next Alberta Clipper working its way southeastward there. And that high pressure just shutting out the Gulf there. Very little southerly flow making it up into Texas, and in fact most of that is heading into Mexico. And not surprisingly, we see a lot of rain there along the coast with that onshore flow coming onto the coast right there. So we get a little bit of turning of the winds as the flow comes on shore due to frictional effects. So we end up with an area of convergence right here, which means upward motion and lots of cloud. And then a closer look at Texas, and with digital atmosphere we can even put on the county overlays. It's fairly easy to do right there. Put the plots back on, and we've got 88 degrees there at Dallas, so the temperatures are coming up. But in our area of Texas, we're only 79 degrees here. And then up in the northern plains, or central plains, a little bit of that southerly flow coming back up that way, but the next front is on its way south right there, coming through eastern Colorado. Not much thunderstorm activity, and looking at the hemispheric patterns, well, what we see here, probably a couple of long waves, maybe, I don't even know if that really counts as a long wave, but definitely one across the U.S. That's the dominant one, and because of that, we've got temperatures below normal in this part of the world. Elsewhere, it's a little bit warmer, a little bit of a wave coming across Europe there, and this is probably another long wave across Asia. So it doesn't look like too many long waves, so we've got kind of a slow progression of patterns, maybe even a little bit of blocking there. 250 millibar chart looking like this. You can see the reappearance of that Hudson Bay vortex, located right there in Quebec. And there's a close look at that. Jet stream located across the northeast U.S., exiting there. And then we have another jet starting to redevelop across the western U.S. into the central Rockies and Kansas. Now, we had talked about how that is probably a subtropical jet, but we'll check out the 500 millibar chart and see if that's taken definition in the lower levels. And doesn't really look like it's showing much of anything there. So probably for the most part, it's still functionally a subtropical jet there. And then the 850 millibar chart shows that there is a little bit of tropical flow coming up from the south. There it is. We've even got 30 knots there at Dodge City. So this 850 flow riding up over the cold dome is helping to create a little bit of cloud activity over Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and the panhandles there. So that's a good setup for that. Further south, though, we have what's either a tropical storm or a hurricane down there. We'll check out the latest from NHC and see what they've got. And it is a full-fledged hurricane, kind of as we expected there. Category 1 there, sustained winds of 85 miles an hour. And the pressure, 983, that seems like it's a little bit lower than what the models had forecasted a couple days ago. It's a little bit of surprise deepening, but that is, of course, headed into the Mexican interior right there, so no effect here in the U.S. Okay, a look at the satellite data right there. A few thunderstorms there across the Pratt and Alva area of Oklahoma, and then some upslope storms around just north of Tucumcari up to Clayton. And I'm going to zoom this out a little bit. That's pretty zoomed in. In fact, while that's loading, I'll just give you the infrared so you can check out Franklin there. A little bit of an eye. Well, actually, that's not the eye. That's a cold top right there. The eye is going to be more of a lighter green or gray color, and it's probably going to be right in there somewhere. Okay, let me take a look at the chat, see what we got here. We have Sue M there, enjoying the good weather in Indiana. Alex Front also reporting the good weather in Indiana. In Oklahoma, David Holcomb is talking about severe storms, 4¼ inch hail in Medicine Lodge, reported by law enforcement. Okay, I guess we'll have to check out those storms. We'll bring that up. So we're getting a little bit of strengthening of that upper level flow. We saw that on the 250 millibar chart, so that's going to definitely help with storm severity there. Okay, we're going to bring up the Vance Air Force Base radar, and we'll start adjusting that. Alex Front says it's been a while since he caught a live episode, but still been watching. Love the in-depth analysis. Well, I appreciate you joining us. A good day there in the Metroplex, cool, where David Moore is. Meteor shower on the 16th. I heard a little bit about a meteor shower on one of my emails from, I think, Space Weather. But, of course, we're all kind of distracted here by this eclipse coming up. Brightest in 100 years. Yeah, I'm not too sure what meteor shower that is, but, of course, that would be worth Googling there. Okay, yeah, we will be covering the eclipse. That'll be towards the end of the broadcast. I don't want to do like other webcasts and have you wait until sit through the whole webcast if you're not interested in it. So I would probably wait about 10 or 15 minutes before we get into the details of the upcoming eclipse, and we will cover that. Looking for more rain where Ryan is there in South Florida. Eddie W. is here. Hurricane Franklin making landfall from Ryan there. We have Alexi joining us, and Alex Front, Burl H. Sue M. is going to be making a PayPal donation, and that is very much appreciated. And I went through the tabulation last night, looking at the Patreon donations, and that's much appreciated. And I think we have some options opening up here for 720p broadcasting. And I'm not going to really know for another week or two, but we may be able to start improving the quality thanks to the donations that are coming in. We have Kevin McKinney here. Ryan saying tropical wave rolling through starting tomorrow in South Florida. Radar showing storms over South Florida and the central Bahamas. We have Jumping Flash here, and David Moore asking about the terrain map. Is that digital atmosphere? Yeah, that's digital atmosphere. You go into map, and there's an option here for import planetary map. I don't know if that's showing up, but that's it right here, and I have some different planetary maps, and those are basically just JPEGs that are plotted kind of in an XY format for the entire world. And it's pretty easy to do those maps like what you're seeing right here. We have Carl Berghoff here, and Ryan Toomey's talking about another tropical wave coming off Africa. We are getting into tropical storm season. So looking for development there. Ray Woody, a new name. Good to see you here on the webcast. Carl's got a new printer. Missed the live cast, and I am thinking about doing some more hand analysis soon, and maybe that can be kind of a benefit of some of the Patreon donors. Maybe we'll do some private tutoring here for hand analysis. Perseids this weekend from Jeff Lockwood. Fun with Tech saying hello, and Jeff Lockwood is coming to Kansas for the eclipse. Okay, so one last look at Franklin there on the infrared imagery. And there's the storms up in northern Oklahoma coming into the Alva and Medicine Lodge area. So on GR level 2, they're going to look like this. They've got kind of a disorganized appearance, maybe a little bit of strong gradient on the south side of these storms. On the inflow side, these storms are picking up the inflow from the south-southeast like that. But there is a lot of cell competition in there. So the stronger cells are going to be mainly confined to this area. So definitely this storm here near Alva, west of Alva, Cherokee. And then we have this other one just northeast of Enid. And we'll take a look at the tops of these storms real quick. And definitely some we're very close to the radar site. So you can see even up at 19.5, we're only about 11,000 feet off the ground here. So it's very difficult to kind of assess the upper parts of these storms due to this cone shape of the weather radar there. But of course we can use the Oklahoma City radar if we wanted to. And then the other storms around there, it appears this one here near Medford is topping out at about 33,000. And plenty of high reflectivities aloft, especially with this one right here near Medicine Lodge. See, we're picking up some very high reflectivities all the way up at 20,000 feet. So this is almost certainly producing some hail at this time. There's a look at the polar orbiter data, and The usual dust coming off the African coast right there. We can see that all the way into the Atlantic right there. Some of it making its way across the Atlantic, and within that a couple of easterly waves. There's one right there. Probably another one coming off the coast right there. And then we have our well-developed hurricane, Franklin, and maybe another easterly wave right there across the Bahamas and Cuba. That'll be arriving probably in Florida tomorrow. And then, of course, we have all the smoke up in the Pacific Northwest, not really dispersing. Some of it, however, is sneaking out through the Yellowstone area, northern Wyoming, and into Nebraska. So this could be a little bit of a factor for the eclipse coming up in a week and a half. Mostly up in the Pacific Northwest. I think the odds of that affecting things west of or east of the Rockies would be very minimal. But who knows? All we need is one good frontal system to come through, and it could do a pretty good job dispersing all that. Okay, the thickness and pressure. Patterns are looking pretty weak, but we can see that Alberta Clipper coming out of the Dakotas. And that's been a slow mover because yesterday we saw it a little bit further to the north, kind of like that. So I think we're only looking at a forward motion of maybe about 10 knots. And that'll probably be heading for Illinois and Indiana very slowly. And we can see that the dominant synoptic scale pattern across the south shows that we're under the influence of the Bermuda High there. And probably this old polar high starting to sink in and merge with the Bermuda High itself. So we do have a couple of boundaries down in this area in Texas. Texas has been kind of a graveyard for these boundaries, and because of that we've got tons of cloud and precip, as you saw in the opening webcast on the opening screen there. And it's not until we clear out all those boundaries that we're going to get rid of a lot of that cloud. We'll take a look at tonight's QTs, and Fort Worth is showing this here. This looks a little bit more like a springtime loaded gun sounding. Lots of inversion right here. So any of the development that we're getting during the day, it's just rising and stratifying up at about 8,000 feet or so. And then up above that we see the drier air that I was mentioning earlier. The clear blue skies up above the mid layers. And here's a quick look at the dynamics for the current time. It's looking like this. There's a big wave right there coming out of the Dakotas, and that's supporting the system that we have just south of the Dakotas in this area here. And then there's a downstream ridge. Maybe a little bit of a weak shortwave coming through Iowa like that. And fortunately, it appears the big subtropical high is confined to the southwestern U.S., so not too much hot weather for Texas. Okay, let's see here. Now we're going to get into the forecast, and I've got a few charts set up here for the eclipse, but we're going to start out first with the mesoscale forecast, looking at the HRRR model. Thunderstorms up there in Kansas being picked up by the models, and for tonight, those will continue shifting southeast. Maybe arrive into the Tulsa and Oklahoma City area in fragments about midnight to 1 in the morning, but the overall trend will be for those to diminish. A few storms persisting all the way to dawn around the Amarillo area. And then you see a little bit of redevelopment pick up here tomorrow. Here's the composite reflectivity from the NAM. Okay, there's tonight's thunderstorm activity, and it looks like it has missed the storms near Wichita. Yeah, those are completely missing from the NAM, so it has missed out on that activity. But we can still look at the overall trends. It looks like it's probably going to be active tomorrow night. Let's see. Tomorrow night's Thursday. Yeah, here we go. And we've been looking for this for a while. This MCS developing just east of Cheyenne and pushing southeastward overnight. So we're going to see it probably around the Goodland area during the webcast tomorrow night. And then it'll move southeastward overnight into the Oklahoma area and then die out before it reaches the Red River. And then for the weekend, a lot of that starts shifting eastward into the Midwest, Ohio River Valley area, Tennessee and Kentucky, and then just storms on the high plains. Okay, getting into the more long-range pattern. Well, we've got that persistent northwesterly flow across the central and eastern U.S. We got that jet slipping in through the Rockies. And then for the rest of the week, the jet is mostly going to push eastward and then be out of the picture. Flow starting to diminish a little bit here in the central and western U.S. And then we come under the influence of this ridge around Monday. Lots of jet stream activity in the northeast U.S., so that with a northerly flow means more mild weather for the northeast U.S. And then midweek next week, the medium scale ridge pushes eastward to the Great Lakes. And we find that around Wisconsin, Illinois, Lake Superior by Thursday. Then Friday next week, we've got more ridging building in through the high plains. And then we've got this very persistent troughing, and the long-range models have been looking at this for Saturday and Sunday. Looks like ridging across the Great Plains. One little small-scale wave moving through the Dakotas on Saturday. And then we get up to, let's see, Monday. Monday is going to be the day of the eclipse, and we see fairly zonal flow across the northern U.S. Some of the models have been indicating troughing off the northwest coast, which that's kind of indeterminate as far as cloud cover across the high deserts, because that area does tend to be kind of devoid of cloud. What we would need to get a lot of clouds disrupting things, we would need kind of a deep southerly flow. So we don't know for sure at this point what's going to happen there. However, we do see a little bit of northwesterly flow in the Great Plains. Normally northwesterly flow is good for visibility. And then we see troughing along the east coast, which can be problematic, but it seems like most of the problems I've seen with cloudiness have been with light southwesterly flow in this region. So I don't really see too many problems with this particular solution of the GFS. What we need to do is take a look at the we'll compare the GFS runs from run to run. So we're going to compare last night's GFS. You can see that this is for the eclipse time. In fact, let me zoom this out a little bit. Okay. I think I lost it there. 288 hours. Okay, that was the correct one. We're going to compare that to the previous runs. And this will give you an idea of how much error there is. Now, I'm sure there's probably other channels out there giving eclipse forecasts, but part of putting out a very accurate forecast is knowing when you're being overconfident. And at 288 hours, there's just not much confidence in the models at this point. For example, if we compare the current run to last night's or this morning's run, this is last night's, you can see there's a difference here, a major difference in the model output. Today we have kind of a flatter solution with weaker winds. Last night we had more ridging, more amplitude of this ridge in the western U.S. And this looked better for visibility out in the northern Rockies. And then the model before that, much different picture. Now we had southwesterly flow. This is bad for visibility. We would have a lot of high cloud and mid cloud spreading across the western U.S. This was yesterday's run. And then the previous overnight run looked like this, and then the previous day's run. So you can see it's kind of all over the map here. So we're not really converging on any details. Maybe the common thread here is maybe some ridging somewhere in the central U.S., because I definitely see it here. Last night's run, well, it shifted a little bit west, but the run before that, now it's over the high plains, the run before that. See, there's kind of a persistent signal here for ridging in the central U.S., so that might be something to go with right there. But right now there's too much variability from model to model, and we're not going to know probably until slightly after the weekend. And this is the ensemble solution using a combination of the Canadian model and the GFS model. This is the 500 millibar heights. It's kind of like the pressure up at 18,000 feet. The black lines are the actual pressure, and the colors are a measure of error. So there's a lot of noise in this area. We're not too sure of the details as you go further north. Like from some of the members are painting a wave there, others are not pointing a wave. It seems like there is some fairly good agreement, though, that there will be some sort of troughing off the British Columbia coast with this particular run. Not so clear as we go inland. But the general consensus of all of the model members is some troughing along the west coast. And there's that ridging right there in the northern plains. So if you're in the central U.S., there may be some hope there. Okay, the thickness indicating a lot of warm air across the southern Rockies. So any frontal systems would be in the Pacific Northwest, according to this model output. And trying to think of any other fields that might help us, maybe sea level pressure. Yeah, it looks like just kind of a lee side high right there in the high plains. Southerly flow, we've got the Bermuda High kind of in place, dominating the weather. Southerly gradient across the southern U.S., so I don't really see any problems here east of the Rockies. I've always been concerned about the Appalachians, though. Depending on the pattern, you could have easily broken layers in that region. So in any case, we'll just have to continue looking at this, and eventually, as we get about around 7 days out, maybe, we will be pretty close to what the solution is going to look like on the weekend. But I would advise extreme caution for those of you using sites on the internet that have forecasts for the 21st, there is a lot of disagreement between all of the models at this point. Okay, I think that's probably about all that we'll do for tonight. Not much weather going on, and we've done the eclipse weather. Just a quick look at chat, a little bit of... Wow, chat is really busy here. I see a question about adiabats. I'm going to have to cover that in a different webcast. No buffering or audio problems in DeWitt County, Texas. Very good. Model forecast for the MCS. Kevin discussing an MCS. Oh yeah, that's for tomorrow night's one. Looking almost the same as last night's forecast. Sue M. suggesting a book reading club. That sounds like a great idea. Little discussion in the chat about moist adiabats, and I think that's probably about all I got for tonight. We'll just make it kind of short and sweet here. So anyway, I appreciate you watching the webcast, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night, and we will go over the forecast again for the eclipse tomorrow night. Have a good evening, and we'll see you then.